Hello and welcome to the Hoop Troop Podcast. I am Matt O'Connor, and joining me as they will on all of our episodes are my cousin Luke Drobner and my brother Mike O'Connor.
What is happening?
And we are back, and we're happy to announce the NBA is returning to action. For those of you who don't know, the NBA voted last week almost unanimously. Only one team voted against the plan to return. And it looks like we're going to have some NBA basketball coming back at the end of July. So the scenario they did decide on was to bring back 22 of the 30 NBA teams to hold another 8 games per team in order to kind of get some final seeding arranged. And then ultimately, if there are any seeding debates for that 8 seed, so if any team is within 4 games of the 8 seed, they will have a chance to have a play-in tournament against the 8 seed where they would have to beat the 8 seed twice to eliminate them and move on and advance to the playoffs, or the 8 seed would only have to beat the 9 once to advance. Is it perfect? Probably not. I'm sure they're going to run into some issues. But I'm sure, as most people will probably tell you in the NBA and otherwise, we are just excited to have some basketball back. And so looking at this proposal right off the bat, I can tell you that I understand why the Portland Trailblazers, they were the team to vote no to returning. And I understand why. It makes sense that a team kind of on the fringe of getting into the playoffs wouldn't necessarily love this scenario. But that said, they're very much in the thick of it, and they have a shot at getting in. So I'll turn it over to you guys. What do you guys think of this plan to return?
Mike, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is funny that on the last episode where we were speaking about what they were planning to do, obviously much has moved since then. Pretty much the sweet spot of everything we were talking about, almost exactly what Matthew was expecting. It kept conference play for the people like me who were not looking to depart from conference play yet, while also giving a runway for players to get back into shape with the 8 regular season games. And it also, I think, provided probably the best way for those fringe teams to have a fair chance at making the playoffs. So I'm excited, and I'm just excited to have something to watch. I thought I saw maybe that it would be 6 games throughout one day during the end of the regular season. That's going to be incredible while we're all home. So, it's all positive in my mind.
And I think it is. It's awesome. And I think to clarify a little bit to my introduction of this return plan, the reason they landed on 22 teams was realistically to give these fringe teams a chance at making the playoffs. They took anyone within 6 games of the current 8 seed, which allowed them to bring 13 Western Conference teams and 9 Eastern. And that's why, I guess, realistically, they wanted to have a competitive feel, and they made that cutoff at that point, I think, realistically, to kind of invite one extra team from the Eastern Conference to give the Wizards a shot, because otherwise you would only have Western Conference teams within striking distance of an 8 seed. But I think it is a pretty fair way of going about this. An 8 games is not a lot, but if you look at all these teams, if the objective is to get within 4 games of the 8 seed, they're all right there anyway. So I do think that, while imperfect, it is probably the best solution Adam Silver had in front of him. And I think it'll be interesting to see it unfold. Luke, what are your thoughts?
First off, I want to say I'm very, very excited for basketball to come back. I've been dying all quarantine because there's no sports and especially no basketball. And I'm very upset. So I'm excited now that the games are coming back. I think the NBA did a really great job. Our second episode, we talked about a lot of different plans. And we made a lot of good points, and I think some of the points we made were assessed when the NBA made this plan. So I personally wanted to see the World Cup style, but I understand keeping those divisions together. And I'm actually a really big fan of the play-in tournament because there are some teams that are really, really close, especially in the West, to that 8 seed. A lot of people are going to talk about the Pelicans and Zion making that jump. I like the Pelicans and the current 8 seed Grizzlies, but I don't think they're quite there yet, mostly because they're both led by rookies and young players. I'd like to see a team like Portland go off and get in. I'd like to see, the Spurs try and get in there. But it's going to be exciting. I'm excited for the play-in tournaments to start as well because I know guys like Damian Lillard are going to treat it like a playoff game, and they might go off for 50, 60 points trying to get in, especially if you're the 9 seed. And you're playing the 8-seeded Grizzlies, you're telling me that Damian Lillard's not going to tear up Ja Morant?
Definitely. No, I think it's super interesting, and I think that actually feeds into, I think there's a few storylines about this situation that, I'd like to investigate. I think will be exciting. And I think first and foremost is when these 8 games per team do come to a conclusion, do we envision, and I guess in the East and in the West, there being a play-in tournament? And if so, who do you think will be involved in it? Luke, I know you were just talking about Damian Lillard, so I'll let you start. We can look at the West. Who do you think, if at all, will be able to contend with the Grizzlies to snag that 8 seed?
So the West is really crazy. The race for 8, as we like to call it, is incredible. The Grizzlies have 3.5 game lead on the Blazers, Pels, and Kings. The Spurs are 4 games out. The Grizzlies are 8-20 against teams above 500, which basically means all the Western Conference teams except the Grizzlies and below. So there's a lot to be said about the Grizzlies sitting at 8 right now, and I personally think there's going to be a play-in tournament. LaMarcus Aldridge is out for the season with surgery. The Blazers right now are probably the favorite, in my opinion, to fight for that 8 seed. And I'm going to be real honest, I could even see the Blazers moving up past the Grizzlies into the 8
Wow.
seed team. So it might be, I think the play-in tournament is going to be Blazers Grizzlies. I'm not sure if the Blazers are going to be the 8 seed or they're going to be the 9 seed. I don't see the Kings getting back into it just because I don't think they're very talented. The Pelicans, I think, are very young, and I think I don't want to see the Pelicans play for that 8 spot, especially because I don't want to watch them get blown out by the Lakers in the first round.
Totally.
And the Spurs I think the Spurs are out of it. So my final prediction on the play-in tournament in the West is Blazers in 2.
Wow.
So.
All right, I like it. And I honestly, in looking at this, I didn't even consider anyone passing the Grizzlies. But I think the interesting thing about this format is that all of these 8 games that these teams will be playing are going to be against the best of the NBA. So you could have the Grizzlies' 8 games be just coincidentally against some great teams. That, how do you know they don't go Lakers, Clippers, Bucks, and just rattle off the best teams. And then the Blazers have, and I'm going to air quote, an easy schedule. And, whoever gets the Suns, you're probably going to have an advantage here. So you never know. I don't necessarily see anyone catching the Grizzlies, especially if you're 3.5 back at the closest. But I do agree. I think the Blazers have enough firepower and playoff experience to treat these games like they truly are win or go home. And as much as I do like teams like the Grizzlies, the Pelicans, even the Kings for that matter, I just think that they're too young. They have too little experience in the playoffs. I mean, you're going up against a guy like Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. And honestly, even them getting Nurkic back, and I promise I won't talk about it too much, but Carmelo Anthony, you have veteran guys on this team who are going to be able to kind of focus in. And I know it's going to be such a different environment, but I still think that, all things considered, they are going to be the team. And I agree. I think they're going to end up doing it in 2 games over the Grizzlies and ultimately face the Lakers.
Interesting.
Any thoughts, Mike?
Yeah. I mean, not much to add there. You guys have pretty much said what I was going to say. In my notes, I am 100% certain that Damian Lillard will be involved with the inevitable play-in that's going to happen. It just is going to happen. There are 3 teams tied for the 9 seed under the 4 games back that you need to play the play-in. Right. The play-in is going to happen. It's just a matter of who's in it. I really could see I could see really the 8, 9, or 10 here. Grizz, Portland, and Pelicans being in the play-in. But I know Damian Lillard will be, and the Blazers will be one of those teams. So, and I really do think they'll wind up making the playoffs. I feel like people have a short-term memory that they were in the Western Conference Final last year, and that Damian Lillard is so freaking good. So I just think they'll probably finagle their way, and that's honestly worst nightmare for LeBron. LeBron needed the Grizzlies or the Pelicans to be the number one, their first round, but I think he might get Damian Lillard in the first round, which is not fun. So
no. Not at all.
I think it's important to note that even if the 9 and 10 seeds have the same record, or they're both 4 games behind that 8 seed, it's still only the 9 seed that gets that play.
Exactly.
There's no play-in tournament if you're sitting
right
in 10 and you have the same record as the 9 seed. So I just think the Blazers are going to edge out the Pelicans and the Kings. I don't see them letting themselves fail. I don't see the Blazers just laying down and dying.
Do we have confirmation that Nurkic is playing?
I mean, he was gearing up to come
No.
back. I haven't seen anything. I would imagine that with these
I
3 months we've been away from the game, and realistically 4 months by the time this actually starts up again, that he is going to be more than prepared. Considering there were other players who were rumored to talk, and I think this is actually kind of a good segue. If you look at the Nets, who are kind of on the bottom of the East right now, there were rumors that Kyrie and Kevin Durant were both going to be back to play. They have both since announced they're not going to be able to play. But I do think, the Blazers should be full steam ahead. And I think we do all agree that there will be a play-in the Western Conference. What do you guys think about the Eastern Conference?
Mike, you want to go first?
Sure. It's funny. When we were kind of preparing for this, I was not entirely sure. I think the Wizards deserve a chance for the play-in, and as a fan of basketball and just wanting to see more intense basketball, a play-in, of course, is what I want to see. But the one factor that I did not think about that you both had brought to my attention is that the Nets could slip. It's more about the Nets slipping versus necessarily the Wizards climbing. I think there's a lot to be seen here. This one is way more uncertain to me than the West. But I do think the Nets slipping is something that could be potential here.
The thing with the East is that the Nets have a half-game lead on the Magic, who the Magic are in 8th, and then they're ahead. The Magic are ahead of the Wizards, who are 9th, by 5.5 games. And so realistically, it's a question not only if the Wizards are able to climb into 4 games, but also it's a question of whether or not the Nets or the Magic drop. And I think given that the Nets aren't going to have their 2 stars playing, even though they do have a good core otherwise, there is a little dysfunction. They just fired their coach. I think the Magic will pass them, and it may not be by much, but I do think they will. So I think ultimately it's a question of whether or not the Wizards can get within that 4 games of the Nets. But I got to be honest, I can't envision that happening. And there is kind of that question mark of, is John Wall going to come back? Because I've seen some rumors there as well, and I haven't seen any concrete evidence saying he won't. But who's to say he doesn't come back and him and Bradley Beal make a push and sneak up on the Nets, and then the Nets don't get in? I don't know. I do think there will be some change, though, and that the Magic will flip with the Nets, and ultimately the Nets will have to take on the Bucks in the first round.
Decent call. Luke, what do you got?
I completely agree with you guys. I think the Nets are going to drop. There's no doubt in my mind that the Brooklyn Nets will be the 8th seed. And the question is whether or not the Wizards can step up and get within 4 games. And I don't see that happening either. Even if John Wall came back, I think the Nets are still a better team without KD and Kyrie.
Interesting.
I mean, it's John Wall and Bradley Beal. I think Bradley Beal is going to go off. I think Bradley Beal is going to start averaging 40 points a game over these next 8 games because he's insane. There's no way to stop Bradley Beal when he wants to get a bucket. And that'll take a lot off John Wall to allow John Wall to come back a little easier. But they don't play defense, and they're playing, the Bucks, Raptors, Celtics, Heat, Pacers, Sixers, who are all going to torch them, right? So, you play a team like the Bucks are going to shut you down, and so I just don't see the Wizards being able to catch up. But it really doesn't matter who's the 8 and who's the 7 because none of those teams are going to beat the Bucks, and none of those teams are going to beat the Raptors. The East is so lopsided. We know, whoever the Bucks and the Raptors play in the first round, it's easy, first round bye, basically. So I mean, that's really the only point I have to make about the East playing.
Yeah,
so
I agree. And I think you bring up a good point. In looking at this, we're looking at what's going to happen with this play-in tournament and ultimately what it's going to look like at the bottom. But I also think these 8 games are going to be a really good opportunity for teams in the middle to make some moves. And so I think it's also important to look at what final seeding will look like in the East and the West 1 through 8, and kind of what some of these first round matchups are going to look like. Because there are some teams who are pretty close. And in the West in particular, there's probably more flexibility for movement. But you never know. Teams could easily jump up and down a few spots and make some pretty interesting matchups. What do you guys think is going to happen? And I'll start with the West again. What do you think is going to happen in the West 1 through 8?
One through I'm gonna stick 1 through 7 because 8, 9, 10, 11 is playing. So I don't see the Lakers. The Lakers are 5.5 games up on the Clippers in second. Nothing's going to change there. The Lakers will have first. That's just how I feel. Clippers will have second. I don't think the Nuggets will catch them. By the way, skinny Nikola
Oh,
Jokic.
had to
So
be.
he's about to put the league on notice.
Luke,
So
you're
I'm
had
into
to be
it.
touched on. Thank you for mentioning that.
Had to be. So the Nuggets are in third, and the fourth place team, the Jazz, we talked about in the second episode, they gave up on the season. So I think they're going to fall to the five, maybe the six. If they fall to the five, it won't matter because I think the Oklahoma City Thunder are just going to move up into four, which which basically is it's the same series, right? Right now the Jazz are in fourth, Thunder in fifth. They're going to switch spots. It's the same series. Oklahoma City Thunder move on. The Rockets are in sixth, tied for fifth with the Oklahoma City Thunder, but the Rockets are terrible against good teams, so I'm not expecting them to do much. And then in seventh is the Dallas Mavericks, who are kind of irrelevant, but it's exciting because I think Luka Doncic is a great player, and
Although
I'm
I
excited to
will
watch him
interject
play.
there. I saw a report that Luke has gained a few lbs since this hiatus. He's done the opposite of Nikola Jokic and has put on a few and is out of shape. So you never know what's going to happen there.
I'm okay with that. Also, we should mention that James Harden also lost some
It's
weight.
true.
So I'm hating on the small ball Rockets here right now, but they are tied for fifth, and they could definitely move up into that four spot. So we really don't know.
Definitely. And so when I was making my notes for the Western Conference here, I took everyone's records into consideration. I looked at it, but I think that a few things are certain. I don't see the Mavericks moving out of seventh, and I'm going to kind of work from the bottom up here. I can't see them moving out of seventh just because they're a game and a half behind the Rockets already. They're playing some of the best teams, and they honestly, since the beginning of the season, have been pretty stagnant in the middle. I don't imagine them jumping, and I definitely don't imagine them dropping. They're going to be the seven. Then, similar to what you said, I think there's three teams in the middle who are kind of clustered that can all move, and that's the Jazz, the Thunder, and the Rockets. The Jazz are currently a game up on both the Thunder and the Rockets, who are tied with the same record. I happen to have the Rockets jumping up to four, the Thunder staying at five, and the Jazz falling to six. I don't buy in on the Jazz, and even though they do have some stars in Mitchell, Gobert, and Conley, who have all been in the playoffs, I can't imagine them keeping it together here, especially after all this time and the friction within their organization right now. So I think they're going to drop, and then I think they're also going to make a first round exit. But then I think I agree with you looking at the top, where I think the Nuggets are going to finish in third. Maybe if sexy thin Jokic is really on a mission, they might be able to vault the Clippers and get to second, but I doubt it. But I think then it goes Clippers in two, Lakers in one to fill it out, and then as we mentioned before, I imagine Portland will ultimately be the eight.
Yeah, I don't have much to add besides I do think it behooves the Rockets to try to get to the fourth or the fifth. I think they in their best interest should be playing Oklahoma City if they want to see the next round. I don't think the Rockets playing Jokic is going to be great for them, but I will also point out that everyone's problem with the Rockets, and it annoys me, but I guess it's true. He meaning James Harden is fatigued by the time the postseason comes, and he hasn't shown up in the postseason is what people are saying. I just did air quotes. I think that he is so well rested, and he's going to come in and be a completely different James Harden, different postseason James Harden, which I think is something that people can't count out for the Rockets. They should, the best case for them is to play Oklahoma City as the 4 or the 5 seed. And I think that's definitely possible. I think it's definitely possible. They're only a full game back. So that'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I don't. My problem with the Rockets and James Harden is the fact that they don't play a center. PJ Tucker is if the Rockets stay at the 6 seed, Nikola Jokic will eat PJ Tucker at the center spot. So,
and I think that's the problem
won't be fun.
with, I had them moving up, and I think I'm more optimistic on scheduling than anything else. Because if they're matched up against these, like all the teams they'd be playing in the middle of the Western Conference right now, whether it's the Jazz, the Thunder, the Nuggets, they all have traditional centers in Gobert, Adams, and Jokic, and they would pummel the Rockets inside. And again, I know that that's kind of the point. The Rockets are okay with losing inside. But I just think, in these 8 games, the rested Harden and Westbrook, you're going to have these guys attacking and doing pretty crazy things on offense that it won't necessarily matter. And that's why I had them moving up. But I think ultimately when it's all said and done, it's not like they're going to the championship.
Can I give one potential hot take?
Sure.
Yes.
What if the Rockets picked up JR in that?
Heat check, baby. Just launch. I love it.
I'm launching that. I'm launching it from out of nowhere. I think
Hell yeah.
he would be such a perfect fit as a shooter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to launch
there are
threes.
no
He's a lot like Gerald
there are
Green.
no rules on that team. Just when you get down the court, if you even remotely have an opening, you chuck
Listen,
it. And that's his MO.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what is possible or not possible, but it's just been in my brain that if he were a Rocket, I think that would be insane and it would be awesome to watch.
It would definitely be fun.
And
now I don't want to harp too much on the Rockets. Let's take a look now at the Eastern Conference and do the same thing. 1 through 8, or Luke, in your case 7, since we know how you feel. What do you think the final standings are going to look like in the East?
Yeah, I'm going to go 1 through 6 on the East because I'm not considering the Brooklyn Nets, Orlando Magic, or Washington Wizards as a real playoff team. So, I mean, Bucks are 6.5 games ahead in first, and I'm going to be real honest with you. I could see the Bucks and Giannis going 8-0 in these regular season games, just because I don't think Giannis is going to come back, and I don't think he's going to be happy that he took a break. So I'm kind of excited to see how hard he dunks on everybody. Then you have the Raptors, the Celtics in 2 and 3, which I think it'll probably stay the same way, but they might be able to swap it around if the Celtics play really well and the Raptors don't. But I think the Raptors are well coached. I think the Celtics are well coached. It'll probably be about the same. And then it kind of gets confusing in 4, 5, 6, where you have the Heat 2 games up on the Pacers and the Sixers, who are tied for 5th. The Sixers are going to struggle, and that's because they've been dysfunctional all year. They're away from home, and they have to play good teams. So unless Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid can come together and figure out their problems, and then all of a sudden Al Horford like perfectly fits into their system, they'll be fine. But that's not going to happen. So the Sixers are 8.5 games ahead of the Brooklyn Nets, so they're going to be in the 6th spot. And then it really comes down to the Heat and the Pacers. The Heat also are really good at home and really bad away from home. So the Pacers, who are slightly better, I think could edge them out to the 4 and 5 for the 4 spot, and that just gives them home court advantage in their next round if they move on. But I think the playoff matchups in the East pretty much stay the same, except at the bottom, who's playing the Bucks and who's playing the Raptors might change around a little bit. But
so I tend to agree. Looking at this, to me, I mean, you have the Bucks 6.5 games up. They're going to be the one no matter what. The Raptors are then 3 games ahead of the Celtics for the 2nd spot. They're not moving. And then the Celtics are then 2.5 games ahead of the Heat. I don't see that changing. But then again, I agree with you that in 4, 5, 6, it gets a little weird where you have the Heat in 4 and they're 2 games up on the Pacers and the Sixers. I don't imagine the Pacers or the Sixers catching the Heat. The only way I see the Heat dropping is truly if the Sixers are on a warpath like we thought they were supposed to be to start this season and ultimately jump up. But generally, I think the Heat are 4. I think you will get the Sixers passing the Pacers just because I think you have enough star power there that you're going to win enough games to move up. But I don't think they're getting higher than 5. I doubt it. And then you have the Pacers at 6, the Magic at 7, and the Nets at 8. Michael, I don't know if you have anything to add there, but I agree, Luke. It's going to be pretty stagnant.
Yeah, I just had the Sixers jumping to the 5. I think that'll happen. And then just because I have it on my mind because I mentioned the JR thing, one of these teams picking up Jamal Crawford would be interesting too. But I'm not going to unpack that. I just think those are 2 players that would be awesome on a postseason run.
I think the Sixers moving up to 5 would be really bad because I know for a fact the Heat would zone the crap out of the Sixers and the Heat would win that series.
Good for the Heat. I like the Heat.
Yeah, I have no problem with it, but I think the Sixers should stick at 6 and play the Celtics.
It would be a great series. There's no doubting that.
I think it's a better matchup for the
totally.
Sixers.
You pound Embiid inside and you just let him go against Enes Kanter and Daniel Tice, and you got to figure something's going to work out there. But all right, I think we are pretty much otherwise in agreement here. I do have one last question just for you guys about this setup. Who do you think is going to be the most affected by the neutral site idea playing in Orlando at Disney World? Luke, I know you were pretty emphatic about this, so I'll let you start.
Yeah, so I got real nerdy with this. I wrote some code in Python to analyze everyone's home versus away records and then against teams above 500 and below 500. and then I ranked all the teams. So just to list a couple of the teams that are really good away from home. Dallas is better away from home. So number one, Dallas. Number two, Lakers. Three, Pelicans. Four, Phoenix. Five, OKC. And then at the bottom is the last five is Memphis is 17th, San Antonio 18, Washington 19, Miami. I messed up the numbers, but Miami's second to worst. Philadelphia is the absolute worst, like by far the worst away from home. And then against good competition, Miami is the best against good teams. Then Houston, San Antonio, Denver, and LA Clippers, and then the Clippers. I need to take back my comment about Houston being bad against good teams. I messed that one up.
Michael's Rockets are they're gonna be vindicated by the end of this.
Yeah. So then at the bottom, Philadelphia is really bad against good competition. New Orleans is really bad against competition. Toronto, Oklahoma City, and then Orlando is the worst against good competition. So that just kind of gives you a rundown on, who's gonna excel against teams and who's gonna be bad against teams. So do you remember the 22 teams that got invited are all good basketball teams. So
I think,
and then also everybody's playing away from home, so it's really tough. And then I also have the average rank for all these teams. So the top five teams that benefit the most are Dallas, Houston, Lakers, Phoenix, and the Kings. The five that get hurt the most are Washington, Milwaukee, Orlando, Memphis, and Philadelphia. And Philadelphia by far.
See, and that's the thing. My hotter take was I was looking at the Sixers, and obviously I have the same concern you do that when they're not home, they're not good. They're 29-2 at home and 10-24 on the road this year. But it's not like they're on the road. Everyone is playing at a neutral site. It's not a home game, but it's not an away game. And so I don't necessarily know how it would impact them. I kind of think that it might help. Part of me thinks that being in a hostile environment wasn't working for them, but something like this would be okay. So I don't know. I do think that there's going to be a question mark there, but I think universally I agree. They will be, for better or for worse, one of the most, if not the most, affected by the neutral site. But then the other two teams that I wanted to look at were the Rockets and the Clippers, because I think looking at the Rockets, they're run and gun. I mean, that is their MO. They go, they shoot threes, they get back. They don't really play defense, but they're fast. And the thing that you're going to have here is very quick scheduled games in such a short time frame that I think it could hurt them. And so, Michael, I know you said you're going to have arrested Harden, whatever, but you never know. I mean, they might just be playing too many games too quickly, and it could backfire. Or it could help, or their style of play will absolutely translate here. I don't know. And then the Clippers, looking at it, them with their load management for the same reason of having a quicker schedule packed together like this, they're not used to playing everyone back-to-back all the time. And when I say back-to-back, I don't necessarily mean every night. I more mean every game. But still, you don't know if their system is necessarily going to translate to what's going on. And so I don't know if it's going to be positive or negative, but I think these three teams are pretty universally going to have some trouble.
Mike?
Yeah, those are all really interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think the Rockets are going to have their own struggles, and I think most of it is going to come from what Luke was saying. I think it just comes down to small ball. It's not going to be able to prevail in the postseason when the going gets tough. I do think it's interesting, the Clippers, the fact that they already weren't playing contiguous games all together. The band was only together for what fraction of the season?
Not much.
And this will be the first time the band is playing night after night, sold out show. So we'll see what that looks like, what it does to lineups. We'll see if both Kawhi and Paul George are both well rested and recovered enough to fight through 3 straight months. It's 3 straight months of basketball. So that'll be interesting. And then my last note is, regardless of home, away, neutral site, LeBron James will not care. And LeBron James is going to destroy people and play to the top of his form no matter where he is. And I think that's probably their best weapon and the biggest advantage you can have. I just think that team does not care where the Lakers being home helps, I think. I'm sure, Luke, you can speak to that. But I just think that team, it destroys no matter where they are and just plays at very high level, no matter what the case is. And I think it actually probably helps LeBron if the away team isn't heckling him and tough on him.
I think it's a good point, Mike. You kind of mentioned it a little bit. There's no fans, so like Philadelphia doesn't have their home crowd cheering them on, and they also don't have the hostile environment of getting shot down. And I'm super excited for playoff LeBron. We didn't get him last year, and we all know how great playoff LeBron is. And now we're gonna get him for 8 games plus the
Exactly.
playoffs. So
Yeah,
I'm
it's going to be
amped.
an absolute
So
treat.
Well, it is going to be very interesting and exciting. I think there's so many different things that can unfold, so many different storylines, and we really only kind of scratched the tip of the iceberg here. And yeah, I mean, as you can probably tell from our conversations, we're super excited for the NBA to be coming back. We hope you guys enjoyed what you heard on this episode of the Hoop Troop podcast. And we look forward to having you guys join us again on our next episodes when we talk about what's to come and some of the other storylines about the NBA's return to action. So thank you guys for joining us and join us next time.